Budget 2026 is here. Decoding India's defence budget. The defence spending evolution. Rupees 6.81 lakh crores in 2025-26. India's defence budget breakdown.
Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX Explained and our special segment on budget. Today we are discussing how much India spends on its defence. India's defence budget includes allocation for the three defence services, the Army, Navy and Air Force. It also includes allocation for the ordnance factories, research and development and capital outlay. Additionally, there are civil defence expenditures such as pensions. Unofficial expenditure includes expenses for 4 of the 6 central armed police forces responsible for border security. India's defence budget for 25-26 has been pegged at 6.8 lakh crores, marking a 9.5% increase over the previous year. This allocation accounts for around 1.9% of India's projected gross domestic product and about 13.4% of the total union budget, underlining defence as one of the government's top spending priorities. To put this figure in perspective, let's look at how India's defence spending has evolved over the last 5 financial years. In 2021, India allocated 4.7 lakh crore to defence. This amounted to nearly 13.8% of the total union budget and represented an increase of about 9% over the previous year, at a time when security concerns were rising on multiple fronts. In 21-22, the defence allocation stood at 4.78 lakh crores. This was a modest 1% increase and accounted for around 13.2% of the total budget, indicating a temporary slowdown in growth. A sharper rise followed in 22-23 when defence spending climbed to 5.25 lakh crores. This nearly 10% year-on-year increase translated to about 13.6% of the union budget and placed India amongst the top 4 defence spenders globally and after the United States, China and Russia. In 23-24, defence expenditure rose further to 5.93 lakh crore, making up just over 13.1% of the total union budget. In 24-25, union budget then raised defence spending to 6.21 lakh crore. And despite the increase in absolute terms, defence accounted for a slightly lower share, around 12.9% of the total budget, even as it stood at about 1.89% of the GDP. Taken together, these numbers show that while India's defence allocation has risen steadily in value, its share of the total union budget has remained largely stable around the 13% mark, culminating in the 6.81 lakh crore outlay for 25-26. The 25-26 defence budget was the highest allocation amongst all ministries. The budget aligned with Prime Minister Modi's vision of Viksit Bharat 2047 and focused on a technologically advanced and Atmanirbhar Bharat and its armed forces. This is what Defence Minister Rajnath Singh after the 25-26 defence budget was unveiled. Listen in.
अधिक का एलोकेशन किया गया है, जो पिछले साल के बजट एलोकेशन से लगभग 9.5% अधिक है और डिफेंस फोर्सेस का मॉडर्नाइजेशन ये हमारी सरकार की प्राथमिकता रही है और इसके लिए भी 2025-26 में 1,80,000 करोड़ रुपए का कैपिटल एलोकेशन किया गया है, जो हमारी सेनाओं की क्षमता को पहले से कहीं और अधिक बढ़ाएगा.
And out of the 6.81 lakh crore defence budget for 25-26, the government has divided the allocation across capital outlay, revenue expenditure, defence pensions and civil organisations, each reflecting a different priority within India's national security framework. Capital outlay, which funds modernisation and defence infrastructure, stood at 1.8 lakh crores, accounting for 26.43% of the total defence budget. This segment covers big-ticket acquisitions and long-term capability building for the armed forces. However, modernization was not the single largest expenditure. Revenue expenditure, which includes pay, allowances, maintenance and day-to-day operational requirements, accounted for the biggest share of the budget. This stood at 3.1 lakh crore or around 45% of total defence spending, highlighting the cost of maintaining a large, deployed and operationally active military Defense pensions continued to be a major component, making up 23.06% of the defense budget, reflecting the scale of India's serving and retired personnel and the base. Civil organizations under the Defense Ministry, including establishments supporting research, production and administration, received 4.21% of the total allocation. Now, a deeper dive into the 26% capital outlay meant for modernization. This component of defense budget saw a 4.65% increase over the previous financial year, signaling a gradual but steady push towards upgrading military capabilities. Within this, 1.48 lakh crores was earmarked for the acquisition of major platforms and advanced technologies, including fighter aircraft, warships, submarines and AI-enabled systems. A key highlight this year is that 75% of the modernization budget has been reserved for domestic procurement, underscoring the government's emphasis on Atmanirbhar Bharat in defense manufacturing. Research and development also featured prominently. Around 26,000 crore was allocated to the Defense Research and Development Organization, with 14,000 crore specifically set aside for R&D, aimed at developing indigenous technologies and reducing dependence on imports. In addition, 449 crores was allocated for the IDEX and Aditi schemes, which focus on nurturing defense innovation through startups, MSMEs, individual innovators and academic institutions. These schemes are designed to support the development of next-generation deep tech defense solutions, including artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, drones, cyber and space technologies, with a clear focus on scalable prototypes for future warfare. Here is how India spent its defense budget last year. The country acquired BrahMos supersonic cruise missiles worth 20,000 crores, RD-33 engines for MiG-29 aircraft for 5,250 crores, and close-in weapon systems for 7,669 crores. High-power radar systems received 5,700 crores, and recently the Defense Procurement Board cleared the acquisition of 114 Rafale fighter jets, and HAL signed a 7,000 crore deal for Tejas Mk-1A aircraft for the Indian Air Force. This is just a few from the long list of upgradation and procurement that India has done in the last year. India defense budget for 25-26 stands at 6.81 lakh crore, making it one of the top 5 spenders globally, compared to the United States, which spends a massive 73.84 lakh crores. Approximately, India's budget is much smaller, highlighting the gap between the world's largest military and India's defense expenditure. China, with 21.9 to 25.9 lakh crore, also spends 3 to 4 times more than India, reflecting its long-term military modernization drive. Russia's budget of around 10.4 lakh crore is higher than India's, but India surpasses many European nations in spending. In South Asia, India spends far more than its neighbors, with Pakistan at 0.74 to 0.82 lakh crore, and other countries like Bangladesh and Sri Lanka spending even less, making India the dominant military power in the region.
Budget 2026 is here. Decoding India's defense budget. The defense spending evolution. Rupees 6.81 lakh crores in 2025-26. India's defense budget breakdown.